Comic Binge presents a sub-series dedicated to one of the most imaginative and divisive comic book runs ever created with an iconic character. This is Knights Never Die, Grant Morrison's Batman, issue by issue. Tonight, we continue with Act 1 of our journey, Knight versus Glove, as we prepare to visit Joe Chill in hell. Hey everybody, welcome back to Knights Never Die, Grant Morrison's Batman issue by issue. We're running one man short, but hopefully that's not going to last too long. I'm, of course, Comic Binge co-host Chris Clow, joined by my partner in crime fighting from the Flash Up to Speed with Wally West podcast, the 007 Files, and content contributor extraordinaire to Batman on Film, Mr. Javi Trujillo. How are you, my friend?
Good, man. A little tired, but I think I'm feeling better than you are tonight. But you know what? The voice right now works for that intro, man. You're really selling it.
Hey, the one benefit of hey Anthony, thanks for joining us. The one benefit of constricted vocal cords, I guess, is that maybe I get a little bit closer to sounding like Batman. So I'll take it. We are back into the ongoing dynamic narrative driven by writer Grant Morrison on the main Batman title. So if you'll recall, the last time that we got together, we were in quasi recovery mode from a relatively mediocre crossover that was the resurrection of Ra's al Ghul, doing really at no fault of Mr. Morrison's, or even, you know, the individual creators, I think, don't really have blame in that, if anything. I mean, they tried to tell the best story that they could, but it was just kind of haphazard. It bounced around. But thankfully, in the last issue, in Batman 672, we got back on course with the ongoing narrative with space medicine. And that issue was kind of a major turning point in the run overall, just because it was that turn. Oh, hey, you know what, Anthony? That's a good question for Paul. We can certainly run that up the flagpole to the master of the schedules and Paul. But I think it's absolutely worthy of consideration. But 672, we got back on course with this narrative that is, you know, the driving thesis of Morrison's Batman run overall, is that everything happened. That wasn't really abundantly clear, I don't think, in 672. But in 673, I think it gets a lot clearer. And this issue is fascinating on multiple levels that I hope we're going to dive into here. So let me see here. Yeah, so 673 released on January 30th in 2008 with a cover date of March, as you can see up there. The issue was, of course, written by Grant Morrison, and this marks the fourth issue of penciler Tony Daniel as the ongoing series artist. Suffice it to say that, yeah, the primary thesis comes into full view, and I'm excited to get into this. So, but just to kind of set the table here, let's start with our basic contemporaneous impressions of our first reading. You know, when we first read it, how did we feel once we closed the back cover, without getting into story specifics? Javi, what do you remember about the reading experience for Batman 673?
I liked it. I liked the affirmation of old stories. Obviously, I wasn't around when like Robin Dies at Dawn and some of these Joe Chill stories got published, but and it was 88, definitely by 89 the greatest Batman stories ever told had been published as a trade paperback and hardcover, and it had a lot of Silver Age stories, obviously, and one of them was Batman confronting Joe Chill again, or Lou, was it Lou Moxon? I forget. Regardless, it was a story that got touched on and also hinted at in not hinted at, I mean told in the Untold Legends of the Batman miniseries, which also got reprinted and included in your boxes of Batman cereal. So it was nice to see elements of that being reflected uh, in modern continuity because, like we talked about last time, in this post 0 hour world, like we went from having Joe Chill being the murderer of the Waynes to just a shadowy figure, and Batman's always out there at night because he never caught his parents' killer, which I don't think that matters. I think Batman's going to be out there just to be out there to make sure what happened to him never happens to anyone again, whether or not he catches his parents' killers. So I liked seeing that brought back, and I also like Batman Year Two as well. And there's some echoes of that one of those confrontations in this storyline. So it was nice to see some of these things be brought up, and also at the same time um, get introduced to some newer elements that's going to push us into RIP that at the time I don't think I quite grasped or made the connections, but in hindsight, it's all here. So, what about you?
Yeah, I was nervous going into this really as soon as I saw the cover solicited because clearly that is an evocation of the Golden Age Batman. And
Yeah,
I was a little nervous about the idea of maybe reshuffling the early years of his war on crime because we had just come out of Infinite Crisis, and we actually got some decently substantive information about something that had changed in Batman's own origin story. In Infinite Crisis, I believe it was number 7. Alexander Luthor, after everything is consolidated into Earth, into a New Earth is what it was called at the time, New Earth, said Batman
yeah,
still fights for Gotham even though his parents' killer was caught. So that kind of changes a little bit of the calculus when it comes to the ultimate choice that he made to pursue his crusade and to wage his war. It's not just, to me, it just like subtly shifts it into the direction of something less personal and more
heroic.
philosophical, I suppose. Definitely more heroic. I mean, that's the whole mode of operation of Infinite Crisis at the end of the day, as we have discussed
Yeah,
in previous episodes of the Comic Binge, where we do binge the entirety of the event. But because of that, and because of what was happening, Superman's origin was really in flux at this time, and I hold and continue to hold Batman Year One in very high regard. So I wasn't really keen to see that story displaced as the origin. Hello, Chop Harder Alchemist. Thanks for joining us. Um, and when I saw this cover, I was like, "Uh-oh, are we going to Superboy punch the wall of reality and get rid of Year One?" But instead, by the time I got to the back of this, and we can touch a little bit on some of the things that they've done with Joe Chill in the years since this issue was published, because I think that's worthy of at least touching on. But I was very, very happy with this more hybridized approach to the history of the DCU, where you are taking elements that in the post crisis era had been totally wiped away because they were too goofy or problematic with a harder edged Batman as conceived by people like Frank Miller or Mike Barr or whomever you want to cite. Um, and you're taking the entire mosaic and you're smashing it together, really. And that I found really exciting because it's not doing away with anything. If it's just finding a way to make everything work. And I didn't really have the
yeah,
words at the time for what Morrison what Morrison's thesis was for the run. And to my knowledge, they didn't talk in specific terms by this point about the idea of rounding everything together, or at least I wasn't aware of it at the time, I don't think. So taking everything and putting it together without really discarding much of anything, so that what you know and what I knew and what maybe my dad had known about Batman's history all counted. And it was a different approach than what they were doing with most other characters in the DCU. But for Batman, let's not pretend like he's outside of a separate class compared to every other DC hero. He is. So taking a different approach that is more inclusive of everything, that every story that's been told, that was a really exciting prospect to me. But beyond just the continuity elements, which I'm clearly fixated on, the storytelling here is just top notch, because
Yeah.
you are getting to the root of the thing that drives Bruce Wayne every day of this extraordinarily vivid life, the roots of his insecurities, the roots of his mission, the roots of his morality, and the way that his morality has evolved over the course of his mission as Batman. I mean, I had some strange feelings after we get to a particular page in this issue that we'll
Yeah.
talk.
And yeah, regarding those feelings, I'm pretty sure we're talking about the same thing.
We are.
And and I was trying to remember if that's where it leaves off in this story, if I'm remembering another story, or I really wanted to read ahead, but I didn't want to get too in my head ahead of myself and then bringing that to this conversation, kind of wanting to just stay here. But it's um it's the way that he crafts the story is very Morrisonian, in that we're just jumping all over the place, but it still makes it's not too like discombobulating. You can easily follow it, and there, obviously there's context clues like with the art. Obviously, something like this isn't, in the present day with Damien running around, and then of course, like you mentioned before, you've got more of a Detective 27 look here before we cut back to other stuff. So Tony Daniel's art helps a lot, um, with the setting and everything, but it just everything is just worked into this beautiful fever dream of an issue that my appreciation only expands every time I read this story, and it's like I really need to read this more often, because I like I said last month, like I always kind of forget about these because it's not specifically part of a major arc. It's in the absolute edition, and that's awesome, but it's not like this is RIP or this is the Black Glove or the Black Casebook or Club of Heroes. Like it's its own thing where it is a story, but it's broken up into different issues as opposed to like the serialized things we're used to now. But it helps. I know you guys did this, like going through 52 with the Carusos, that you get these references to the Thogel ritual, which plays a big part by the end of RIP as well. Um, and we also touched on it with the wrap up of Infinite Crisis and 1 year later stuff. But I
Yeah,
think
I mean,
it's masterfully intercut between everything.
it's just, this is a cornucopia, like this is, in my mind, one of the purest issues of Morrisonian Batman that someone can read, because you're not only getting a really great and insightful look at Morrison's philosophy on the totality of the Batman character, but it's also teasing you, about like what's coming next. We are very, very close at the time that this comes out to a pretty momentous story where everything is going to be falling into place very shortly in Batman RIP. And this is like to me, one of the first major substantive steps that we get toward that rapid deconstruction. And, you know, when it comes to these characters, I have kind of an intrinsic bias against deconstruction. Like, it needs to work in service of the character, but deconstruction, by its very necessity and by its very function, doesn't really do that, right? Like, that's not the intention of a deconstruction. But if you bookend that deconstruction with a really great analysis of character and you start to build something back up again, that's where I'm totally fine with going on this journey. And it takes a while to get to that point. And, you might feel maybe even a little shortchanged by the time we get to the first half of RIP. But that's where it really pays to stick with it, and where this really is a long form narrative that will, it's designed to pay off in a way that I think is satisfying. But all that to say, this is an essential chapter in that ultimate mosaic, tapestry, whatever you want to call it. Fascinating.
And speaking of essential, it's really cool that in these credits here, Grant Morrison is mentioned as the writer, obviously, with a special thanks to Bill Finger, since so much of this comes from what he added to the legend. And, there's various documentaries you can watch about what Bill Finger actually did in crafting our hero here. But I like seeing that nod at a time when he wasn't getting the credit like he does now. And
Yeah.
the iconography in this issue too is so strong that, and I know, what year was this, 2007 still, or are we into 2008 now?
January of 08.
Okay, so we're in the year of the Dark Knight, but we're not there yet. And with hindsight, it feels more apparent to me where it dovetails off of the Nolan influence. Like, this reminds me a lot of the cloud of bats we would see in the beginning of Batman Begins, and we have like a shot later of Bruce staring down a well, and that reminds me of him falling in Batman Begins. But then as you get into a little bit of RAP, but really more of the whole final crisis and return of Bruce Wayne of it all, like, it's laid out right here, talking about the hole in things.
Absolutely.
And the symbolism after you've read everything of there being this giant hole and all the bats coming out of it, and what that means and what it means in the bigger narrative. Like, this story has so much more power by the end of it when you go back and read it.
Definitely. Well, let's go a little bit further into Joe Chill in Hell, Batman number 673. Here is the solicitation distributed by DC in November of 2007. In the wake of Ra's al Ghul's recent resurrection, Batman's body lies near death in a heart-stopped coma. Meanwhile, his delirious mind travels back to a defining adventure in the life of young Bruce Wayne, the hunt for his parents' killer. This special flashback tale also revisits Batman's life-changing Thogel ritual in the caves of Nanda Parbat. So, here is a quick and dirty recap of everything as written by me very recently. So let's jump into things. We're dropped into a room with a heavier set man sweating profusely, demanding that his henchmen keep him safe, before we are also dropped into a dark chamber where Bruce Wayne is undergoing the Thogel ritual in Nanda Parbat. Someone in the background is screaming that Batman has had a heart attack, as Batman tells himself that hallucinations, voices, and experiencing the past are all normal, a very relative term as we progress through the run, certainly. It quickly becomes clear that we're being taken back to the very beginning of Batman's war on crime, a modern age update of the Golden Age aesthetic, complete with a prop helicopter that could have been drawn by Sheldon Moldoff. We're given a look at Bruce's journeys around the world, cultivating the skills he'll need to wage his war. He correctly reasons that no one in Gotham has ever seen anyone like the Batman. But we're also taken to his quiet moment of doubt before his totem would burst through the window in Batman 405. Batman is tracking someone whose smell of aftershave has been stuck with him for the better part of 2 decades. We also quickly see the 10-eyed men about to attack Batman's soul in the desert as he aims to rid himself of the blackness that had engulfed his heart after Infinite Crisis. The heavy-set man, a gangster, frantically recounts an instance from his past as he laments that he didn't kill the kid and make it 3 for 3. A demonic laugh emanates from behind him, but still in the throngs of Thogel, Batman is beginning to wonder how long he's been in isolation. We see young Bruce stare into the depths of the cave that will come to define his shadow, and he comes to the realization that his parents and everyone will die. In his mind's eye, he sees his own casket being carted to a grave, pallbearers including Tim Drake and Clark Kent, with Barbara Gordon not far behind. Batmite reappears, encouraging him to get friendly with the dark. Then a new man in a white lab coat describes for Batman that his fear of loneliness has made him responsible for Robin's death. But Batman abruptly awakens to find Robin, Dick Grayson Robin, standing over him. He's just awoken from a military experiment around isolation that they hope to apply to space medicine. Ah. Batman later admits to Robin that the only reason he volunteered was to get perspective into the mind of the Joker. Back in the gangster's penthouse in the past, it becomes clear. This man is Joe Chill, and Chill knows he created Batman. Batman leaves the pistol from that night in Crime Alley with Chill, returning it to its owner with one bullet still in the chamber. As Batman leaves, the bullet goes off. Thogel ends. Bruce Wayne wakes up in Nanda Parbat. Then in the present, Batman awakens to find the devil standing over him. Lots of stuff happens in this issue. Like, this is, especially compared to the last few, this issue is packed with plot. Yeah. And it's not just packed with plot, it is also packed with character. If you are a fan of Bruce Wayne and you go across the journey of just this one issue, even if you might not be able to grasp like the temporal mechanics that Morrison's playing with here, you're going to come away from reading this knowing something more innate and inherent about Bruce Wayne's mind and his soul. And that's one of the things that I just absolutely love about this issue. It just feels like, I mean, as dark as it is and as full of lamentations as it is, it kind of feels like a party. This feels like a celebration of Batman. And while also just like teeing up this larger mystery, this larger cosmology that Batman is going to be tasked with investigating and fighting against. You know, like, this isn't necessarily a huge play on the part of the Black Glove against Batman. I mean, to a degree it is, but, you know, little did we know at the time that pretty much the devil himself reared his head in this issue. And I'm not sure if it was more fun reading it when it was new, or if it's more fun reading it in a kind of a retrospective way where you have a better idea of what's coming. Both ways are very fun.
I mean, I'd be more inclined to give the weight to the retrospective just because the brilliance is more apparent since we didn't know where a lot of it was going.
Sure.
But I love stuff like this panel where, you know, we get just in a few bubbles, we get this insight into Batman and his relationship with Tim and why, you know, since Tim came on the scene, why Bruce has been so distant with him at times. And, as we go further in the story, they definitely, I don't want to say father and son, but, Tim's loyalty will get tested. And it's nice to see that the evidence of Bruce caring for him too, and why maybe he's not as warm to him as he would like to be, because he's scared, you know. You don't really think about things scaring a guy that laughs like that dressed in a bat costume, but it's a little almost a throwaway line in the bigger narrative, but it has such an impact for a longtime reader that I really appreciate seeing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tony Daniel draws the hell out of
Ah,
this issue too.
yeah,
I mean, I certainly don't want to take away from the power of the other elements of the visuals. Jonathan Glapian, Sandu Florea, Guy Major, Steve Wands on the letters. Everybody just like brought their A game here, and that's one of the things that just makes this like such a quintessential issue of the run, certainly, but also just as a Batman issue. I find that this is a value, right? For $2.99, we got a tour de force through Batman's whole history, pretty much. Um, that being said, I mean, Javi, you mentioned it, I mentioned it. This moment, I get it.
yeah,
It is very much I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you kind of a thing.
I was just gonna say that.
And
He gives him a choice, but does he really if he's pushing him in that direction?
this is one of the rare instances, I think. And the I think it combines based on the information that we got about the way that his origin changed from Alexander Luthor in Infinite Crisis. You know, so Joe Chill was caught. This is how he was caught, apparently. Um, Caught, that word is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Caught. But one of the things, just speaking personally, that I've always gravitated toward about Batman, generally, as someone whom I've called one of, if not my top favorite character in fiction, is that death and justice aren't the same thing. It resonates with me on a very deep
Yeah,
level. It's something that I honestly believe. So this is like, I get it. On one hand, this is an extraordinary circumstance, and it is a full circle moment. It's not like he pulls the trigger, but he
yeah,
effectively loads the gun and points it at him, you know. So it doesn't seem like he's particularly remorseful about that, but the depth at which Bruce's relationship to Joe Chill had been explored up to this point, my understanding is it's relatively surface level. Like, there's not really much of a relationship between Bruce Wayne or Batman and Joe Chill to speak of up through this. At least there's nothing that really sticks out to me. I mean, I'm sure that maybe there's been something in that respect, but nothing jumps out at me as like a definitive Batman and Joe Chill story beyond the origin, you know. So seeing this loop closed in this way, on the one hand, you could argue that it is the callousness of that early Batman that is well documented. Like, he is a harder edged and harsher figure early in his career before he's softened a little bit by people like Dick Grayson, right? He's vengeful in the truest sense of the word at this time in his life, this phase of his life, this season of his life, if you will. But I think this take now. Granted, there's the caveat that this is all pretty ethereal. So, did it really happen
Right.
this way? We don't have a definitive answer, but I'm kind of led to believe that it did happen this way, as conceived at least by Morrison. And I don't know if I'm like super okay with that. Overall, this issue is an absolute banger, as they say, I think. But this moment in particular it just leaves a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. I don't know if the Bruce Wayne that I know would do this. And this is really like the only instance in this entire run where I feel that way. Anyway, Paul, welcome.
It's been a little of an SH show tonight. Sorry, I was thinking like everything's gonna be run smoothly, and then wife got home, chaos ensued with the kid, and then I had to take my dog out. My dog refused to go to the bathroom, so that's why I was been
it
half
wasn't
an hour
an
late.
SH show.
Well,
it was an opposite.
It was the opposite of that.
Well played. Well played, sir. Well played. Yeah, sorry guys, I'm
But
so
you're
sorry.
here now. The Three Musketeers are reunited.
We are here.
That's
Three
all that
Musketeers.
matters.
And we're all for one and all for love.
Love.
That song rips. That song rips, dude. That's
I watched that movie so much on VHS. That music video was always at the beginning of it. So
bro,
I heard that song a lot. Yeah.
Dude, all I gotta say is Rod Stewart, Sting, Bryan Adams. Hell yeah, dude. The three icons, if you ask me. So anyway, I digress.
Paul, before I throw it to you, Javi, is there anything you want to add to the perspective around this moment on the screen here?
Well, I like the idea that, this is him dealing with being in cardiac arrest. So who knows how much of this is actual truth and how much of it is like memory mixed with truth. And if, he did just see, Joe Chill here talk about wanting to kill him. Excuse me. I mean, how much of this is true is, up for debate, but the fact that he's witnessing that he should have killed the kid, like that would hurt anybody, when you're thinking about the man who killed your parents, and now he's saying that he should have killed you. I can definitely understand, why he would put him in that position and let him make the choice, but he is really pushing them to that choice. But like we said before, there's a whole Batman Begins, I don't have to kill you, or I don't have to save you kind of thing. But there was one thing that I didn't get a screen grab of during this whole sequence with Joe Chill talking about how he had a son, and that he lost his son. And that was, I feel like it's up for interpretation. You could look at it literally and be like, his son died. And Morrison doesn't give you that answer. So it doesn't necessarily contradict what we know from Batman Full Circle, which deals with the son of Joe Chill, and how basically Joe Chill lost him, and like his mother ran away with him, Joe Chill Jr. So it doesn't quite contradict. It's like Star Wars. It's a certain point of view, right? But I did like that acknowledgement of there being a son. Period. Like I said, I like year 2 a lot, and the sequel Full Circle, which that art was all over the place last month if you went to a comic shop, because they've been using that Full Circle cover for their reprints for Batman Year 2. So, not the same story, as much as
Certainly.
DC would want you to believe it. Totally different, separate works of fiction. But
Yeah,
I
it's weird.
think there's a lot to chew on here of what happened, what didn't happen, because even still, it's not verbatim from like the Bill Finger stuff. But I'm curious what Paul's thought about this whole issue.
Yeah, man, lay it on us. What did you
Yeah.
think of this one?
Well, it sucks because, you know, I tried to read this at least a couple days beforehand, and the Grant Morrison run has been a very I've always been impressed with how much mileage we can get out of each issue, and so Chris was always 100% right on, you know, I should always trust Chris for the most part, but I was always like, you know, it's hard to squeeze the orange juice out of 22-page comic books a lot of times. Not it's I think it's easier than people probably think.
Not these ones.
But yeah, but these ones are not even close. They're a lot more elaborate. And I think that's the kind of the cool thing about Morrison's run is that they're so deep, and that's Grant Morrison in a nutshell. He's just deep, and he's layered. It's not, everything is not as it seems, as you know, whatnot. So yeah, this issue was another banger. Like you guys said it, and I really appreciated, because, you know, because I'm not reading it all at once, and I'm not you know, whatever. It was kind of cool to get, you know, I didn't forget about Batmite, but I had to like, okay, what happened in the last issue again? I'm like, oh yeah, something happened to him on the ledge. And this was a very fascinating, because I'm like, obviously I'm like, this isn't all, like, something's not right. Like something is psychologically wrong with Bruce Wayne at this point. And we don't, and I have no idea what it is like right now. Like obviously we have what's led up to Batmite showing up, and we have the Zen Ra, whatever thing that happened beforehand. But we're starting to get, I think, like we had talked about before, the pieces of what this whole thing is about, the Black Casebook, that's really starting to come into fruition a lot more into this issue. I think that like the groundwork was kind of laid out before a little bit, but now it's like, okay, we're establishing where Grant's going with it. And I hate to be a broken record, and if you listen to these episodes, yeah, whatever it is, I can't, I'm not better, I'm so terrible pronouncing things. The thing is, I'm a broken record on this, but I'm just gonna keep saying it. I always get Twin Peak vibes from these comics, like especially these ones, this one especially. All I read was David Lynch, like Grant Morrison.
Twin Peaks, but with Batman. Well, you gotta watch Twin Peaks to understand what I'm talking about, to be honest.
Well,
man. No, but but it's like the ethereal quality, but being applied to fiction's most iconic character.
I mean, yes and no. Like, it's not, that's not really what I'm talking about, to be honest, because Lynch dived into the surrealism to tell a very dark, real story. And that's what happened here? It's just me. Hi. He's telling a true dark story with surrealism. And I think that's what Grant's doing. Now, granted, I don't know what the deeper meaning of what he's doing is, and I think that for those who haven't watched Twin Peaks, I highly recommend doing so. Twin Peaks is truly about good versus evil, and the power of evil, of pure evil, like evil incarnate, and also like with the evil, like the between of good and evil as well. And that's where it feels like he's kind of playing in right here. And Lynch uses in Twin Peaks specifically, in all his films, but I think specifically in Twin Peaks, he uses surrealism, and especially later on in the series, like Fire Walk with Me, especially Fire Walk with Me. Like I get total Fire Walk with Me in this movie, in this comic book, if you haven't seen the movie yet. where you're taking the characters and you're taking in these very weird, broad areas, but really laying this foundation for what's coming and what's going to happen. And you don't really know what's real, what isn't real. And that's what I mean by it gives me Twin Peak vibes, because Lynch was giving you things that you didn't know if this is really happening or is it just in this person's head. What is going on? And that's where I think Bat might, like, because there's always like these accompanying characters in Lynch's Twin Peaks series, and they're always surreal. Bat represents that. And there's other and these flashbacks and these different things like that. Like this is Laura Palmer. So all of this, I'm just, and I don't think it's like a straight ripoff, but he's using this as an avenue. It's like definitely a 100% inspiration. And I like this, like with Batmite right here. I'm like, this is totally David Lynch. This is like Grant Morrison being like, I'm going to be David Lynch, you know? And again, that's not like a dig. It's just being real. Like he's using this to tell a story. And it was really refreshing because Batman is so, I feel, not is so one-dimensional. That's obviously what I want to say, but I feel that writers can a lot of times be one-dimensional with him. And I think but the thing is, that's always, I think, a money-making avenue, because the more one-dimensional you are with Batman, I think in some ways, the more, again, I don't mean that in a true one-dimensional sense, but you get what I'm saying. There's one kind of direction to go with. It's a lot easier to sell more Batman comics with that, right? If you go and take chances and take broader stories, you get people being like, I don't like this Batman. I don't like this, but you get people by complaining, right? Which I know people complain about Grant Morrison's run, ironically. But I think that what Grant's doing here is, in my opinion, is he's broadening the storytelling to an extent of like, and I think Chip Zdarsky did something similar. And obviously you could say he was doing his Grant Morrison impression himself, which I think is fair. But that being said, even though I haven't read all of Chip's run, I've read about over half of it. I would say it's not bad. It's pretty fun. And I actually think it's refreshing what Chip did in his run so far that I've read. And I would say that Grant has really done some foundational work here, besides, I think, even with Damian Wayne and the things he's done before, but he's broadening, I think, the types of stories you can tell with Batman by using the surrealism, by using the avenue of dark arts and things like that Batman's gone into, psychological, whatnot. And I think he's really telling a story about, or not telling a story, but he's showing people and writers how broad Batman really can be, and not just in a like, I fight supervillains that have superpowers. No, he is fighting the internal battle of himself more than we realize, and he's almost an enemy of him to himself, which I know where this is all kind of going a little bit. So it's fascinating what Grant is laying down here. I have no idea who this other Batman is. I'm very excited to read about it and find out where this is all going. I know there's a lot more going on that meets the eye, and that's very exciting. And I also know, I'm curious how he marries this and Battle for the Cowl and Dick being Batman all together, because that's where I don't know where this is going. I know Grant's got an end game with that, and I can't wait to get to that point of where I'm like, oh, this is where it kind of intersects all together. So I love this run. I love this issue. I feel like we're going to get less away from Grant Morrison's Twin Peaks, like David Lynch love as we go. But I feel like at the end of this arc, it's not going to be until the end of this arc. Maybe not. Who knows? I don't know, but we'll see.
Well, I'm glad you liked it. I love this one. What did you guys make of the modern recontextualization of this classic banger here? Because, oh man, do I absolutely love the way that Morrison is folding Robin Dies at Dawn into modern Batman. Like, this is one of the coolest things that I've seen anybody ever do with Batman, honestly. What do you guys make of it?
I mean, it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, the fact that he underwent all this stuff to get a better idea of the Joker who he already established
Such
in last year's
efficient
comics.
conceit. Efficient.
Yeah. You know, that the Joker has.
What issue is Robert Dies of Dawn again?
Batman 156 is in the Black
Sorry,
Casebook.
Robbie.
I know.
No, it's okay.
I've got it.
Just how the Joker is, you know, gives birth to these new identities, and it's, what did he call it? It's not super sanity. It's like super insanity, or
super sanity. It was because
is that how he described it?
His perception. This is one of the things that was detailed in Arkham Asylum. Is like the way that he takes in external stimuli is on a different level. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting my Morrisonian quotes confused.
As you're wanted, it's fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's all full circle. It all comes out in the end. But I found it funny too, like with this page or these panels right here, given where this is in Morrison's career of writing Batman, like this is after his JLA run, which, you know, Batman often got cited as like the Bat God, how he could take down everyone in the Justice League. And part of, you know, Tower of Babel for Mark Waid had something to do with that too. But, you know, Batman always had a solution, and Morrison even establishes in this run that victory's in the preparation. And what's Batman doing here about preparing for Joker possibilities? But amidst all of that invincibility that Batman seems to have, he puts it right here on Front Street. But even a Batman can succumb to stress and shock. So as mighty and powerful as he is, like, he still humanizes the character right before he elevates him back to Bat God status as we get into Final Crisis.
Yeah, it's just it's
such a deft tightrope that he's walking here.
It seems contradictory, right? On its on the surface at least. But that's one of the things that I take so much value in, the inserting of Robin Dies at Dawn into that wider tapestry is such a good way to communicate to a reader, even someone who doesn't know what Robin Dies at Dawn is. I mean, you get the essential information in this issue. You just get more of it if you have read that original story. But it's an excellent way to emphasize that he is human. And I mean, Morrison writes his characters in an overly humanistic way pretty much universally, save for those who are not able to empathize is the wrong word, but maybe dial into the human condition. You know, that was the way that Morrison conceived Zorn, for instance. Like, you still liked Zorn in New X-Men at the beginning before you realized, you know, what was going on. But
I still didn't know what was going on, and I've read that twice.
Well, in any event, you know, the closest approximation just in my timeline as a reader that I can apply to this is the sort of year one arc that Jeff Loeb inserted into the Long Halloween. You know, it was just a really good, deft usage of prior continuity to tell us something about the early years of Batman. And here, Morrison's arm is obviously much longer and much more ambitious. And mixing modern Batman with a classic story from another era that was way more comfortable with taking the weird and the ethereal and putting it front and center, like, it's not something that should work. And it does. And the fact that it works as well as it does is an incredible statement on the deft usage of Batman and his supporting cast. So I love this. I can't say enough about it. One thing that I do want to touch on, though, we already talked a little bit about Joe Chill and the choice that Batman backed him into a corner for, I suppose. There's been quite a lot of rapid development with Joe Chill over the past 5 or 6 years, like very recently.
Mm-hmm.
Back when this was a podcast, Paul and I broke down the issues as
Mhm.
they came out for Batman 3 Jokers. And
Mhm.
spoiler alert for anybody that hasn't read that story yet, but I mean, it ends with a rather tender moment between Bruce and Joe. And Batman forgives his creator. And I know that this struck some people poorly. I'm not sure if this specific moment was the thing that did that, but I loved this because emphasizing the capacity for forgiveness is something that so many people seem to overlook for Batman. And you lose something. You lose an element of humanity when you don't emphasize that at the end of the day, the reason he's a hero is because this is within his ability. And what does it say that he's able to give the man who caused him so much strife in his life a relatively peaceful end that this very man stole from his own parents? I find this to be a powerful moment. So I like that a little bit better than I like the way that Joe Chill is treated here. But also, too, surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, there's been quite a lot of movement and use of Joe Chill in the Arkhamverse. Most notably, if you played Batman Arkham VR, you looked in the man's dirty face directly from the perspective of an 8-year-old Bruce Wayne, which was one of the most horrifying things I've ever played as a gamer. But then more recently, Batman Arkham Shadow, that was exclusive to a VR platform. Core conceit of that game is that you infiltrate Blackgate Prison to try to find information about a seemingly new villain that is terrorizing Gotham and is about to unleash a day of wrath on the city. And you meet the old guy that runs the commissary, and you, over the course of pretty much the entire game, cultivate a relationship with this guy. And you only know him as Joe. And it's not clear who he is until the very end. And I'm not sure, because I'm not sure if the creative team has talked about it, but it seems like the ultimate resolution of that story was inspired by Three Jokers. And it seems like it's slowly becoming more incorporated into the canon of Batman, that he has the capacity to forgive the man who created him. And for my money, I think that's a better outcome than this one is. Now, again, we don't know for sure if this is really what happened, but if I get to choose, then I would probably choose the more forgiving Batman, because I think that's what makes him a hero. So, any thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah, I would say the Joe Chill stuff in this was very weird, considering our podcast we had done, which we gotta release those one day again and put them on just at an audio only. I would say reading this version was not was probably like my least favorite part of the book, because I think a
I like
young Bruce
everything
Wayne
up until this page, just to be clear. Like everything else up to the. But anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, you're fine. Like I think you're on the money. I think that like by the way, splash page on this is gorgeous, except for the blam. But I would say I think people what I think is hilarious. I don't want to go on a Three Jokers like side quest, if you will, but I'm going to a little bit. I think the problem of the joke, again, among other things, the people's problem with Three Jokers, I think is a modern masterpiece personally. I think part of the issue that people have with the Joe Chill stuff is like you're saying, like, it's like, oh, why, blah, 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 this. I think the biggest thing about the two differences here is, like I said, this is a young Batman. And the other, because the ears are the dead giveaway, right? But then you also think about, yeah. And also, like, I don't know if this is real or not, too. That's the other thing. I don't know, like, if this is like in Batman's psyche. Like, when I'm reading this, I'm like, because we don't know what is real in this, to be honest. We don't know what's in Batman's head. Like, it's all over the place. So I don't know if this was deep embedded in Batman's like wish list, because so he doesn't have a guilty conscience. I honestly have no idea. I kind of didn't know what to think of this, to be honest. I thought maybe it wasn't real. But at any rate, I think the people who have issues with him forgiving Joe Chill, which I almost forgot about because I haven't read that book in a long time. But the big thing that sticks out to me is why that never bothered me in the first place, Chris and Javi, is because when he saves him at the end of Three Jokers, like that is the essence of the forgiveness right there. Like that is him forgiving Joe at that moment. Like
Joe thanks him.
Moment,
Joe thanks him.
Exactly.
And he takes a beat and he says to him, "You're welcome."
Yeah. And so, like, look at this. He tormented Joe and let him kill himself because he wanted him to do that, right? Like, it's almost like I didn't do it myself, so he did it for me, so I'm not guilty, right? He could have let Joe fall and die in Three Jokers, but he didn't. And that's because the Batman we know in Three Jokers is a somewhat mature, semi-stable human being that, did that and kind of realized, I think subconsciously, I did that. And that is a way of me in a way of forgiving him and realizing the people have changed and the circumstances are all different, et cetera, et cetera. It's a beautiful moment. And so I think the way I read this, I only read this as this was a all in his head kind of a thing. Maybe it was real, but yeah, I think that people are forgetting that the act of him saving him at the end of the Three Jokers is the true forgiveness. And that whole thing that you just showed at the end is just more of the epilogue of it more than anything. Right. So I think people who have issues with this need to look at the context of the story of where also think about who's driving to drive Batman mad to do this is the Joker. What better person to show Batman that forgiveness and evil and manipulation is the wrong way to go than with the Joker. So again, Jeff Johns doesn't get praise enough for that story. Anyway, Javi, go ahead.
I was just along for the ride with you, man.
All right,
I think it's hard to look. I see what you guys are saying about the Three Jokers thing, and I agree with you. It's just, does one negate the other? Because how many reboots have we had the continuity between this and today? And I haven't read Three Jokers since it came out, and I honestly don't know where it fits. I don't think it does fit. I think, isn't it Black Label to begin with? So it
Yeah,
has
but
that.
its canonicity is arguably more solid because the link to the story came from Darkseid War,
Which isn't necessarily anymore anyways, because that was New 52. I feel like it's all kind of squishy, and I think it's one of those, if you want it to be in your headcanon, cool, and if you don't.
We haven't gotten to that moment yet in the new history of the DC universe, I don't think.
No.
That'll
I
probably
haven't
be
read
the final.
issue 3 yet, but yeah, that should be the last one. I know in issue 3, Wade has it that Talia steals Jason's body and resurrects him. So it's more in line with the animated movie than Superboy Prime punching the wall and
Close
breaking
enough.
reality and bringing Jason back. So, I mean, it's still Judd Winnick either way. So, win-win.
Yeah, close enough. I mean, it's arguably when I read Batman Annual 25 when it came out, I was a little bit lost at the time on exactly how the mechanics of the Prime Punch worked, but I think it makes more sense for her to have stolen its body. That's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, listen, Joe Chill stuff aside, and we do get this great moment of realization from him that I think is cool, while Batman is getting, harshly resuscitated by the Devil Bat. But this issue is, I think, overall an exceptional example of this run. It incorporates classic Batman continuity while still pushing forward into something new, and it is just setting the table for the insanity that we're about to embark on in RIP. Now, we've still got 2 full issues to go before we get to Batman 676, of course, but one of the things that makes this one just stand out is that first look at the face of evil that we got. And I had no idea at the time. Paul, you might not have any idea now, which I prefer. But, is it the devil himself? I mean, that's a question we're going to be wrestling with through RIP and beyond. So I'm pretty psyched to jump ahead, because the next time we get together on Nights Never Die, of course, we are going to be talking about Batman number 674, a long belated sequel, Batman Dies at Dawn. But before we go, let's take a look at the critical reception of the time. So I didn't find a review from Comic Book Revolution on this issue, though I suspect Rock would have been a fan of it. IGN's review by Dan Phillips was highly positive. He awarded the issue 9.3 out of 10, which is amazing on IGN's scale. And he said, quote, "It's been said that all fiction is a dream, but if there's one medium conducive to mimicking the fractured visuals and emotions of any dream state, it's probably the comic book. Morrison and artist Tony Daniel take full advantage of their artistic form this issue, drifting in and out of a number of crucial moments in Batman's career, sometimes in the course of one page. It's sometimes difficult to tell whether we as readers are witnessing Batman's spiritual transformation from 52, his quest for revenge against Joe Chill, his grief-stricken state following Todd's murder, or all three. And therein lies the power of Morrison and Daniel's overall message. Bruce Wayne's life has been, in many ways, one extended nightmare." Well said. No notes. The jump cuts around the different perspectives of the issue, for some reason, it makes me think that this is Morrison's equivalent of Dunkirk, the way that it plays with time and the way that you absorb the story. I think there might be something to that. Another review from Timothy Callahan at the Sequart organization. Ultimately, Batman number 673, like all of Morrison's runs so far, has been about re-engaging Batman with his forsaken past. The silly stuff that hasn't blended with the post-Neil Adams vision of the character has found its way into Morrison's interpretation of Batman, and whether the Black Casebook ends up as a journal of Batman's fever dreams or a true document of supernatural phenomena doesn't really matter. Batman was affected by his voyages into the strange alien landscapes of the Silver Age, and in Morrison's cosmology, dreams and reality are different sides of the same Mobius strip. Also well said. No notes. The BOF review for this issue by Bill Jet Ramey is generally positive, and he says, quote, "You have to be thinking, how in the hell does Morrison weave all of that together? It's certainly a legitimate question, especially in regards to Batmite, but he does it and does it well, I must say. Of all these fragmented storylines, the Bat-Man's, yes, I spelled it that way on purpose, confrontation with Joe Chill was particularly good. Joe Chill's fate has been redone and retconned several times over the years, and now it seems as if his demise has come full pre-crisis circle. While Morrison puts his own ironic twist to the story, it's certainly a nod to Batman legend Bill Finger and the original I Made Batman story." Yeah, true enough. So this one was pretty well regarded at the time that it came out. I think its reputation has only improved with time, especially since we get to see in retrospect how it fits into the overall run. But yeah, one hell of an issue. And the next one does not really let up either. So that'll be fun. Let's wind this down. Javi, my friend, where can people find you? And do you have any other parting words?
I am all over the place. The aforementioned Batman-on-film.com, where I'm reviewing Batman and Robin, which number 26 comes out tomorrow with a Tony Daniel cover. So a little bit of synergy there. Batman and Robin Year One, which has one more issue to go before Wade wraps up that origin tale for the dynamic duo. And Batman Second Night, which is bi-monthly Prestige Plus format Black Label story set in basically year two of Batman's career, back in the 1930s or 1940 at this point. Up to speed with Wally West, working on getting caught up on Absolute Flash. Just going to do it as a big overview of the first. I think we're up to 7 issues now. I've done 1 and 2 individually, but time to play some catch up over there. And I've been very busy at the 007 files lately, with Global James Bond Day being a few days ago now, and rumors and contradictions to rumors and Amazon AI shenanigans and Thunderball just had its 60th anniversary soundtrack released, and we got to interview music producer Neil S. Bulk, who, if you love soundtracks for movies, and especially expanded editions, odds are he was the exec producer on those, putting those together. And it's our second interview with him, and he definitely displays his passion for music and for Thunderball in particular in our most recent episode. So if you like Bond or you like John Barry scores, go ahead to the 007 files and check that out. We have a YouTube as well where you can hear the audio version, and then there's also different video content there. And yeah, I think Spidey Dude experience from time to time as well, and I think that's all of it. Obviously,
So you're not
Comic
busy.
Binge.
You're not busy.
No, not at all. I keep waiting for those Star Trek Discovery guys, the Discovery debrief guys, to call me to talk about Commander James Tiberius Kirk.
Yeah.
And,
I'm gonna have to. I'll have to try to call those jerks and see what's going on. Yeah, true enough. Well, thank you for making time for us, my friend. Always appreciated. Paul,
Always,
is there
always,
anything you want to tell the fine watchers, viewers of the Comic Binge before we dismiss for the evening?
Well, I want you to go to the playlist section and find some videos you haven't seen yet and check them out, because we have a plethora of things to check out. So if you haven't already listened to these previous episodes, go to the playlist section. We got tons of other content stuff. You'll find something you'll love. I trust me. So go to the playlist section, find some videos, check them out. Next week we're doing The Crow, right? Is that right?
yes.
Is that next week? I thought we were doing that closer to Halloween.
That's next week.
I mean,
No,
we are getting close to Halloween. By the time we record it, we'll be halfway through October.
My costume gets here tomorrow, I think.
Ooh, nice. So, Chris, you better hop on that. I'll just say this. I've read just a little smidge of it so far. I'm very much looking forward to discussing it next week. Very much so. So
I just bought some Cure on vinyl last week, so I too am getting ready to read The Crow.
Cool.
Nice. All right. Well, I think go subscribe, etc., etc. Let's do it.
Excellent. All right. As for me, you can follow me on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, etc. at Chris Clow. Check out Discovery Debrief, a Star Trek podcast if you haven't before. We'll get back together soon, I promise. And be sure to keep it tuned to the Comic Binge for all the great discussions and comics that Paul and I have cooking up for you. But the best way to stay in touch, of course, like, comment, subscribe, engage with this video, engage with our catalog, tell your friends about us, please. Positive communities in fandom sometimes, unfortunately, are hard to find. And with these 3 gentlemen at the front of it here, we always try to keep the things that we love at the forefront. That's what binds us, right? So at the end of the day, if that's the kind of thing that you like to bring to your fandom, then you're welcome to join us, and you're welcome to bring along your like-minded friends as well. Next time on Nights Never Die, we descend further into this trip into the long-belated sequel of sorts with Batman Dies at Dawn. Where's the cover? There it is. But of course, remember, until next time, Batman and Robin will never die.
Sir.